And in this house, the most dire, horrible events took place.
You are not content with the stories, so I have seen their lives come. Be my victim.
Through watching scenes of violence, through watching scenes of transgression, through watching scenes of horror. There's an enormous amount of sort of abattoir of excess.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Do you think in a Scream-based stream I should add the obligatory Anthony Perkins, Psycho, or not? Is that going to work or not? I don't know. I feel I should. I feel it would be on point. And they talked about Billy Loomis so much. It just feels like I need to make that tribute. Good evening, folks. It is a emergency stream. I do not use many of these. They are a rare treat, but occasionally there is a movie that I simply have to talk about as soon as it comes out. You will not be surprised that Scream 6 is one of those movies. I was trepidatious. I was concerned. I was alarmed. I was a little cautious. I had many adjectives when Scream 5 was announced, with a completely new team following Scream 4 being, I will now argue, very underrated. I certainly didn't get it at the time, but on rewatch, Scream 4 has got a lot going for it. But it did not carry the franchise on. It didn't manage it. So Scream 5 comes out, and Scream 5, it was a sort of matter of, what are they going to do? Where are they going to go with it? And they took another stab at the requel idea, which they had pretty much done in Scream 4, but I liked it. I'm very generous towards Scream 5. Obviously, we're all waiting for Sean, the actual Justice Warrior, to give his take on Scream 6. I'm personally very invested in that because I like the guy. I have a bit of a disagreement with his take on Scream 5, but his method of choosing, or I guess not choosing is the word, guessing who the killer is, prompted a whole video from me. And we do have some practitioners of the Sean, the actual Justice Warrior, his method. We have some of those in the chat, right? Yes. I want to say you were wrong. I really do. However, but that's for a different section, actually. I need to advertise this, folks. This is spoiler free for the first bit. I'm thinking probably some of you will just want to know, is Scream 6 worth my time? Should I go to the cinema and risk it? Risk getting in the way of the guy in a tracksuit with a massive sports bag who is obviously not coming in to just record it for a screen grab torrent? Who would even do that? Should you risk paying about 13 quid for a ticket, and some popcorn, or should you wait for a more nautical opportunity to view this movie? I will answer that in this section, and I will try and keep my thoughts general. I will try not to go beyond anything that is in the trailers for you. I will give hints, but I will try not to do anything that I feel would spoil your enjoyment of the movie. And then after that, and I will make it very clear when I'm doing it, we'll have a new banner and everything, folks. I will move on to the gory details and then give you all the spoilers. So good to see you all here. I'm giving people a chance to arrive. I'll probably go for about an hour. That's what I'm aiming for. I try and do these quite concise. And it's also kind of interesting. It makes, it's good practice for me. I'm sort of interested in whether or not I can just talk solo for an hour. Let's see. Here, see, Dev and Lilith are going to say stunning and brave, but maybe a bit too stunning and brave. I don't know, man. There's a review, I'm telling you. Sargon on Twitch is a weird idea, my man. That's giving me some odd imagery, okay? At least it's not TikTok, right? By the way, who said this? Oh, it's Will. I need you to know right now, I, like Jason, am taking a Manhattan. I went for a slightly sweeter Manhattan. So I've got a mix of dry vermouth and sweet vermouth. And I probably put a few too many maraschino cherries in. That is my preference. I'm a bit weak for them, but that is my preference. And yeah, yes, I have a screenshot of your comment. Don't worry about it. But we will get to it. We'll get to it. I think probably folks are here. If you're watching on the recap, hello. But I'm just going to proceed at the moment. And I don't know, maybe you've seen it already. Has anyone else actually gone into the cinema and seen Scream 6? Let me know. Let me know in chat if you've already gone and seen it. I kind of like the idea that a bunch of you are waiting on proper horror shows say so. My own little thumbs up towards this one. All right. Okay, let's get into it, and let's talk a little bit about setting the scene. Let's get cozy, like just us. Let's increase the coziness of this vibe. Where is it? Yeah, there we go. That's cozy. Let's just all be friends here. Okay. So one of the big changes that Scream 6 has made, that I'm sure a lot of you were interested in, you could not avoid noticing, they made it really obvious, is that Scream 6 is in the city. They moved out of Woodsboro, and I can only say that was a very good idea. I think we all agree with this. The return to Woodsboro in Scream 5, it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense in Scream 4 because that idea was about going back to the beginning, but you can't keep staying in Woodsboro. They needed to distinguish themselves. It was the right decision. It was a bit of a gamble. It invites the very obvious comparison to Friday the 13th Part 8. And I don't think I'm ruining anyone's fun by saying that there is indeed a prominent clip from Jason Takes Manhattan in the film. I was looking out for it and I picked it up instantly. I thought, okay, you had to do that. You had to do that. Don't worry. They are actually in the city, unlike Jason. They spend the whole movie in the city. They don't just sort of hop in there for the last 15 minutes. I'm not bitter at all about that, chat. Don't worry. Don't worry about it. And I think we're going to see a lot more in the... a lot more horror in the city. I think that's an interesting move because horror has a bit of a lag. You know, we spent a long time with horror just out there in the in Fantasyland, and then horror moved into the suburbs. You all know this. This happens in the 70s and 80s, and then we start moving towards well, people aren't so much in the suburbs now. They're in the cities. The cities are the place to be. So naturally, horror has to go there. Horror has to be where we're familiar with. And I think they largely do a good job with it. There are issues. There are big issues when you do horror with the city. You know, the idea of how do you do your murder without being seen? I will say, frankly, they cheat. They cheat quite a few times. There are a fair few moments where you think, you sure no one witnessed that? You sure no one heard that? But it is, it's not egregious. It's not egregious. I think I saw some, oh, waifu. Yes, indeed there was. So, oh gosh, I've got to stay spoiler free. It's very early on. The chap, we go back into a chap's apartment, and it is playing on the TV there, and it's one of the boat scenes as well. There we go. Is it really bad that I just recognize it instantly? They also played a nice clip from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which might have some cultural relevance there. Let's just gloss over that a little bit. But even though they obviously had to move outside of Woodsboro for Scream 6, the big question is, what were they going to do? I mean, did they need to do anything at all? I might sound a little harsh here. I can't give this the massively positive review that I wanted to. Trust me, I went in willing to give it a really fair shake. But there are problems. There are big problems with this movie. Oh yes. It's not all bad, but there are problems, and I'm going to try and cover those problems in the spoiler-free section. So one of those, I'd say one of the things that I thought of when I was watching this, I'm going to throw back here. I'm going to toss it back to to Angel season 2, Joss Whedon's Angel. I know I'm not the only one who saw the whole Buffyverse multiple times, so I feel I can make a reference to Angel here. The season 2 finale of Angel was centered around a sort of fantasy saga, and one of the characters returning to a home dimension. It was Lorne's home dimension, and this character didn't want to go. He was fighting going back to his home dimension, and it was every bit as bad as he remembered. But what Lorne said, what Andy Hallett playing Lorne said was, I thought I didn't have to go back, but I had to go back to know I didn't have to go back. It's that kind of pseudo-profundity that I like to bring to you guys, all gift-wrapped. I think what I saw from this, from Scream 6, was effectively a kind of confirmation that we don't really need to keep going. It is all optional from now on. It had trouble knowing what to do with itself, basically, is what I'm getting at. The big theme of it, if you remember, I made my prediction, and I thought the big prediction based on, I should probably get the screenshot up again. The shrine that we saw, which I've got in my screenshot here, where they've got all the items and Easter eggs from the previous Screams. I saw those and I thought, okay, what's the big theme? Last year, they did toxic fandom. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't go with actual Justice Warriors interpretation all the way, but I can completely understand it. I think their theme last year of toxic fandom was not thought out and did not say what they thought it would say. I don't know whether let's see. One of the big problems of if they were trying to take on toxic fandom, which is already a silly topic, their big problem was that people were motivated by how terrible Stab 8 was, and therefore needed a reboot. They wanted to prompt a reboot. Now the trouble is, they show you clips from Stab 8 repeatedly and show you that it's absolutely god-awful. They have it directed by Rian Johnson. They're making a point. So for their point to work, they need to actually be saying that Stab 8 with a gold-masked ghost face with a flamethrower is actually really cool, guys. And I don't think that's the point they intended to make. What we have in this one, I thought would be another fandom argument, another argument about over whether the sort of series purists, the kind of people who keep all the items, really try and stay true to the series, some kind of fight with them. They didn't do that. I was wrong. Actually, most of my predictions were wrong, and I'm going to take the L on this one hugely. But again, predictions, they flow from what you're shown. That is my defense, and I'm sticking with it. I think it veered off. Yes, they did. They reference him as the Knives Out guy directing it, rather than the Last Jedi guy directing it, which is the obvious reference you make if you're talking about fan controversy. They kind of buried that. Now in this one, what is the theme? What are they doing? They are talking about franchises. It's not about fandom purity. Their big theme is franchises. They bring in a little bit of commentary on cancel culture, very, very weakly. And there's a little sprinkling of stuff about online misinformation. But I'm going to be really honest with you guys. None of those points landed. None of them were hugely thought out. I'm not trying to attack them on this one. This is good. I will take a smattering of ideas over a big monologue lecture any day of the week. So that was good. I didn't get at any point someone looking right in the camera and, calling me an incel, calling me an idiot, attacking me for wanting the series to stay faithful. So I like that. But on the other hand, the ideas that they had were kind of a mess. And frankly, I think it's a result of a really short production process. They did not have a long time to make this. Scream 5 was a success, and they were told, get going on the next one immediately. And I think that informs a lot of the issues we see with the movie, keeping it spoiler free. So let's see. Oh, where do we go? Basically, I would say if Scream 5 was beloved for its attention to detail, this is the opposite. Okay? There are little things, and I think I'm very sympathetic to this, because it was a rushed production, again, less than a year to write and make the movie. Even with all the money there, it's difficult. I think you have signs that a lot of things were sort of thrown together a bit on the fly and not fully thought through. Scream 5, they had time to think it out. They had time to write it. They had time to get it right and fill it with loving, carefully crafted tributes. I don't know about you folks, but you might mock me. It meant a lot to me that Scream 5 went out the way to make a very obvious tribute to Wes Craven. Naming a character Wes, and then having a party with a big banner for Wes, and then ending on for Wes. Wes sounds very weird now that I've said it 3 times in a row. Distracting. It really meant a lot that there was a tribute to Tatum. Tatum, Dewey's sister, who has not been mentioned since the first film, as far as I'm aware of. That was lovely. That is an attention to detail. Now, unfortunately, in Scream 6, I don't know, maybe there was wrangling over which actors were available. There was a big publicized thing over Nev Campbell not being offered enough to be in the movie. And so Sid doesn't appear. I don't actually mind. I kind of wanted all the legacy characters to duck out of this one because I thought they had a really good farewell in the last one. Well, I had a couple of ways I would have liked them to do it, but given Scream 5, I would have been very happy if they had stepped out. Now, I'm going to make another really nerdy reference here. Folks, don't judge me, but cast your minds back to the Star Trek movies. Yeah, I want you to think of the Star Trek movies and Worf. And I can't be the only person aware that Worf had left the Enterprise. He'd gone on to DS9. He was a captain of his own ship. So in First Contact, they have to come up with a reason where they rescue Worf and get him back in. And then they have to find another reason to get him back in for, was it Star Trek Insurrection? I don't remember well. And then he's just back in Nemesis. They just don't have an idea for it. There's no justification for why Worf comes back, but he just has to be there, right? And I felt this about Gale. I'm sorry to say it, folks. I think this one does Gale extremely dirty. Extremely dirty. Keeping spoiler free, how I do that, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that are on the verge of spoiler. They don't really mess with the plot. They are little details that you just wonder, why did you do that? So it's stuff like, despite being a bit bonded to Sam and Tara, who are meant to be like the new leads of the franchise, you know, they were out on good terms. And Gale ends Scream 5 saying she's going to write a book that's not about Ghostface, that's a tribute. I'm so worried about spoiling Scream 5 here. I'm going to try and walk it back and not say it. Okay. No spoilers for Scream 5 as best as I can try. So she was going to move away from writing books about Ghostface, okay? But in this one, she's written about Scream 5, and Sam and Tara are angry at her. And even though there are some clever interchanges and callbacks and Easter eggs, the whole fact is Gale should not have written that book, but it kind of feels like they forgot. They didn't know what to do with Gale, so they say, okay, she's written a book, and it's annoyed them, and we're going to replay a plot line from Scream and Scream 2. And that was disappointing. And then you also have the fact, like, how has she gone and written and had a book published in a year? They're very clear, it's a year. Well, don't worry about it. They kind of forgot. And this is a bit that really annoyed me most of all. Gale, this isn't a plot thing, but Gale has a boyfriend. Gale has, after all the things that happened in Scream 5, Gale has a boyfriend. It's very British advert, if you get me. The guy doesn't even get a name, which is pretty harsh. And if you forgive me, you know, this was in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling anything. The guy in her apartment getting killed off in the trailer, so I don't feel this is a spoiler, that's her boyfriend. He never gets a name as far as I remember. And there's a weird moment where Ghostface taunts her and says about this guy, his muscles didn't protect him. And it's like, and Gale says, yeah, they didn't. Oh, geez, Gale, why don't you just go teabag him? Like, it was brutal. Why would she say that? That's a really harsh thing to say. What was she doing? I found it weird. I found it very, very weird. It was poorly thought out. I see Gatsby has been noticed. It was a weird choice. Basically, this was not a Gale who moved on. She felt like, I guess he would be Captain Worf, thrown back into the Enterprise because he's just got to be there. Gale was in there. Her life was modernized and enriched, as it were, with something that just doesn't matter. You didn't need to do it. He didn't need to be a boyfriend. He could have been an assistant. He could have been a bodyguard. I would have thought Gale would have probably been pretty clever and would have got a bodyguard. So that is the kind of Gatsby's giving his opinion. He didn't like it either. It wasn't thought out, and it felt like a throwback, and I was not a fan of it. So Gale, I'm afraid to say, was done really dirty in this movie. And we'll talk a little bit more about it in the spoiler section. Yeah. Gatsby will probably try and talk about it now. Of course, he would do this when I'm solo and can't mute. Give me a second, folks. Oof. What would we do without those sweet tones, eh? What would we do? The world's sweetest burbles from that cat just coming in. There was a question I wanted to get to. Richard, yeah, they did not, but I don't know. I'm sure they didn't use it, but they did go on a weirdly weird tirade about a guy trying to insult him, insult him, limp dick, virgin, etc., etc. I'm like, that's pretty, no, it's pretty cringe doing that, guys. Just, it felt very boilerplate, and they went out, and it just didn't match with, it kind of felt like they were having a go at that audience and still trying to attack men with that idea. It was a weird little bit there. I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan of it. I think he's going to do this most of the stream, folks. Bear with me. That's a spoiler for what he's going to do, unless he settles on his cushion. Anyway, more spoiler-free bits. I'm going to move on. I'm going to say something really nice about the film that was good. And this is probably something I should have led with. The film looks gorgeous. The music is really strong. That was lovely. The pace is excellent. This is a 2-hour film. Scream is not usually 2 hours. It flew by. It had really good, relentless pacing. I loved that. That was good. You can tell, folks, I do have a little bit of a checklist here. I'm trying to say something nice every time I have to. Like, I'm going to be putting the boot in on this film. I'm very sorry, but I'm going to try and balance it, okay? I'm going to balance it. So pacing was good, music was good, photography was good. It's the same writing and directing team, so we should be grateful for that. They did lean on the humor a little bit more, and something that was very good is that the 4 big survivors from Scream 5 have a really good dynamic. They're very charismatic. They bond well together. It's awesome. And I think that really helps. They introduced new characters very well. And I had a good grasp of all the new characters from the off. They were very distinct. It was easily done. And they did a very good job of that. You weren't confused about who was in the picture. That was good. I'm still sticking on the good stuff because I am going to have to go savage on this film later. I'm very sorry. I'm going to have to. Was this the longest one? Richard, I think it was. Does anyone want to fact check me? I'm not certain. It feels weird to me that it's over 2 hours, but it might not have been the first one. Someone please fact check me on that one. Okay. Oh, another thing I liked, brutal baiting of the fans. They know that people are still enjoying the rumors about Stu Macker being alive, and they made several really fun jokes about this, which I appreciated. It would probably be a massive jumping of the shark if they were to ever bring Stu back. I'm pretty sure that I saw a cameo from Matthew Lillard in the end, which I am very fine with. But yeah, they just they had fun with it. They had lots of fun. They didn't take it too far. Now I'm gonna say, oh, do I balance it? Shall I put the boot in again, guys? What do you reckon? I feel I could do it. No, I'm gonna. Okay, that's a vote from Gatsby. We're gonna stay positive, folks. We're gonna stay positive. They, how can I say? They know one thing that Scream is really strong on, and that is set pieces. They were. Oh, sorry. Will, if that is about the Stu Macker references, there are a couple. So when they were talking about, there's a scene in the police station where they explicitly referenced people still thinking that Stu was alive, which I enjoyed very much. Gatsby says be brutal. Okay, folks, I will do it. I'm going to get some nice points out there because, I did see people enjoy it. If we're grading on a curve with the whole slasher genre, then this isn't that bad. But frankly, folks, I expect more from Scream. I expect a higher caliber of murder movie. That's so. I want to be fair, but I am going to have to critique it because I expect more. So, one thing that Scream does really, really well is set pieces. And I think they know this. Think back to Scream 2, which this, by the way, resembles in lots of ways. Also, a few new people tonight. A few people I haven't seen catch live. Hi, White Heart. Good to see you, man. Campus Conservative. Good to see you. Like seeing new people. And I like hearing Gatsby shriek. Gosh. Okay. So, set piece is good. Scream 2, think of that trying to escape from the police car. That was good. We love that. We love that stuff. This leans on that very heavily. You saw in the trailer trying to climb over a ladder between apartments to escape from Ghostface. That was a really good scene. That was probably the highlight for me. Another one was the bit on the tube. You saw this in the trailer as well, folks, so I'm not spoiling anything. They leaned on it. It's a sequence towards the end. It is very good. It cheats rampantly, of course, but it cheats massively, but it still has that sort of peekaboo aspect where the train going through the tunnel loses the light and then you lose track of where Ghostface is. That is a really effective scare sequence, and they do very well. I'm also going to lean on a little bit about how clever that bit was. This is where I can stay nice and positive, okay? When it was doing the set pieces, that is when the film was at its strongest. It is the right way to do it, not Friday the 13th style, where it's kind of, kill in the woods, kill in the woods, kill in a cabin, kill in the woods. No, set pieces are where it's strong. And the tube is a really clever place to do it because, frankly, the tubes are terrifying. I'm going to go off on one a little bit, but there is a kind of powerful history of horror on the tube. And that is because the tube in real life is often very scary and disturbing. If you flash back to something like Larry Clark's Kids, there's a very memorable scene in that where a homeless person who doesn't have any legs is wheeling himself through the tube on a skateboard, dragging himself along. It's got a very sort of disturbing quality. You're not expecting to see it. It's someone in a state of, absolute desperation. And the kind of horror in this is on the tube, there's no filters. In the cities, there are very few filters. You might try and get yourself in a more expensive neighborhood to gate off, but everyone in the city does eventually have to use something like the tube. And that is when you can be exposed to people who've really fallen through the cracks of the city and just been able to absolutely hit rock bottom. This might not be the kind of talk you expected from a Scream 6 review, but I'm going somewhere with this. So something like Larry Clark's Kids, a very disturbing film in its own right, showed this disturbing imagery, this upsetting imagery directly. A film like Jacob's Ladder showed this metaphorically. If you remember the very start of Jacob's Ladder, he's on the train and he's seeing a homeless person who then he sees has a kind of tentacle-like tail. He's absolutely alienated. There's a woman speaking. She sounds Eastern European or something, but the point is she's unkempt and he cannot understand her. So your protagonist just feels absolutely isolated, and he's come into contact with people who have, they're absolutely in a state of desperation. They've really fallen down the cracks. They're in the dregs. It's a bad look. The point is, the horror is in the kind of desperation of the lowest point of the human condition that the city exposes you to, and you cannot get away from. I was going to go for a personal anecdote. Maybe I will actually. I'll give you a little personal anecdote. One of the things that I saw at the end of my time in London, when I was going down a street in a fancy area, it was around the theatre district. Don't laugh, folks. Don't laugh. I'm very cultured. And there was a woman begging. She may have been Turkish. She had that sort of look. But the thing I remember most of all was she was heavily deformed. A lot of her face was missing. Like it looked like parts had been cut off and maybe burned. And this was just daylight. I'm going round in a bit where you could pop into any one of the theatres and pay £250 for a ticket, maybe £80 for a cheaper seat. And there was someone who was from far away missing her nose. It was extremely disturbing. It was extremely upsetting. She obviously wasn't in a good place. I wasn't in a good place. It sounds like I'm equating it, but I'm not. But my point is that the horror of the city is that you can be exposed to people who have fallen into a condition so desperate you would not have comprehended anyone could survive it. But they are there in the city. Now, and the Tube, of course, is a place where you are locked in. You can't get away. You're in close contact, and it can be very shocking. Harmony Korine wrote the film, and oh gosh, is Harmony a chap or not? I know in Kids there's a cameo, and I think it's a cross-gender cameo. I do not remember though. I haven't seen that movie for a long time, and I'm going to be honest, once was enough. Yeah, Lynchian, very Lynchian. That thing of just being, you think you're in a nice area and you get exposed to the underbelly, very much so. Also, hey, Kent Jensen, good to see you, man. Good to see you live. Welcome. When you reach this bit, whilst you're going at 1.5 speed, hi. Okay. So that is my point around why it was a really clever idea to go on the Tube. It's a distinctive set piece, and it reflects a real life horror that we are aware of. You've seen the trailer. You've got that idea of you're locked in, you can't escape, you can't run, and the threat can get closer, and you lose sight of them. Now, there was, I think I'm leaning into a spoiler territory if I say it. Okay, I'm not going to say more about that. I will say it's a very good scene, and it's very apt, and especially when we have seen so many stories of barbarity on the Tube and people not helping. It's incredibly close to home. It's just, this is horror movie. This is horror doing what horror should do, taking reality, putting a bit of a filter on it, and representing the horror that we feel. And it was doing that. I could suggest tweaks. I think there was a little bit of cheating. You know what? I'll risk something. This is on the verge of a spoiler. It's a misstep in the film that they often do a little bit of work to try and make it seem like in the crowded city that people aren't around. And therefore, if they were around, they might have intervened. Whereas I would say the true horror of the city, as we've seen from those stories about assaults and what I on YouTube have to refer to as intimate violations, they are seen. People are witnessing. Loads of people see, but they don't intervene. That is the horror of the city. You are surrounded by people and you are still completely atomized and alone, and no one will help you. That is why cities are horrific and scary. And that is more of the energy that I think they should have tapped into. Now, so it's not perfect, but it was a good decision. Just looking through the comments now to just see. Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad it's not just me. See, this is a common experience. This is a common experience. It will. You see things, you see creepy things, and you have to get used to them in a city. It's disturbing, right? So I'll move on from that. What else? Still spoiler free, as you will know, as is in the trailer. Kirby Reed from Scream 4 is back. She was teased in Scream 5. It was good. It was fun. It's nice to see her, but I'm going to be honest, the way they bring her back is absolutely ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And you know what? I think I'll just say it because it doesn't affect things hugely. Kirby Reed is back and she's with the FBI now. And she introduced herself as Kirby Reed. No, what? Agent Kirby Reed, FBI. And Waifu and I looked at each other and we just laughed immediately because it was so ridiculous. And it kind of felt like Scream 6 had moved into high camp territory. And I was kind of here for it. That high camp isn't really Scream. Scream 3 leaned on that a bit and I wasn't a fan of it. But, you know, I couldn't be mad. It's very silly. They have moved away from realism. Kirby Reed, FBI, and it killed me. I was laughing my backside off in the theatre. What can I say? There's kind of a game that Scream 6 ends up playing, which I've referred to as yo-yo credulity, which is a bit of a problem. That is, you have the suspension of disbelief, which you need to make the film work, but then you have someone say, this thing was obviously ridiculous. How did you fall for it? And I'm like, whoa. What level of reality am I meant to apply to this film? Because lots of this film is so silly that for you to then say, you should have known this was a lie, it feels like a cheat. And Kirby Reed is a bit of that. But I've got to be honest, it was nice having her back, even for the meme value. But it's very silly. Okay, folks, I am going to have to kick. I'm going to have to put the boot in. I've been so nice, right? I've been so nice. I'm going to have to kick the boot in. This is my final thing in the spoiler-free section. And that is the matter of what Scream 6 is trying to say about franchises. Frankly, it doesn't have much. It doesn't have much to say. One of the problems is Scream has to stand outside of horror and it comments on it. So in Scream, there are normal people and crazy folk trying to replicate horror and bring horror logic into their world. And that is why Scream is able to comment on it, right? Lovely. Scream is all about commenting on the state of horror. They kind of repeated themselves in Scream 5. Because they really didn't focus on toxic fandom. They didn't do it. So, but this one, what they're trying to say about franchises, there was nothing. There was nothing to say. And there was a problem of, in a franchise, you have this. But then they just do the thing. Now, if you say, hey, a movie always has thing X, and then you just do thing X, it's not that clever. It's just kind of saying, it feels like a sort of Gen X, like, oh, I'm doing it ironically, guys. It's like, no, that's not Scream. That is Scream imitation. And one of the problems, and again, this is where I have to put the boot in on the film. If you're struggling to know, what do you say about horror now? What is the thing happening in horror that the current Scream should comment on? Franchising isn't a new point. I have theories about how they could talk about franchising in an interesting way. But they didn't have anything to say about it, really. There is an obvious thing that they could and should talk about, but they didn't, and it is to the detriment of Scream. So this is me putting the boot in here, I'm afraid to say, with apologies to everyone who really enjoyed it. The very obvious thing to talk about in horror is wokeness. It's the message, the imposition of the message. And the trouble is, Scream 6 didn't want to talk about it because it was doing it unironically. Now, I've praised the actors. I preferred how Mindy looked in the last film, but this is good actors. The guy playing Chad also, I think he had lost. There's a scene early on where he's topless and the dude is absolutely ripped, and I think possibly to get that ripped, he lost so much weight and body fat that he kind of looks a bit thin the rest of the movie. It's a minor complaint. But otherwise, the cast is good. They have good chemistry. But they've moved from an all-white cast in Scream to all the main characters being diverse. Like, none of the main characters are white in this. Gale is in as a legacy character. And it's notable that that is the exception. And we can go deeper into that, but the point is, Scream is about commenting on what is happening in horror, and horror at the moment, as I kind of referenced in Scream 5, horror is doing this elevated thing, but horror is also doing, what the critical drinker calls the message. And again, guys, you know me, no hate to anyone. I feel like almost patronizing going out of my way to say that the actors are good. Like, yes, the actors are good. We know this, but this doesn't take away from the fact that this is very Netflix casting. And Scream should comment on this. And Scream could comment on this. Mindy, who is the Randy replacement, and does get to give the Randy Meek speech, which she absolutely delights in, and she's having a whale of a time, and it's very funny. It's a highlight of the film. She doesn't say anything about this, and that is the problem. The biggest trend in horror, in fact, in most movies at the moment, should be commented on, and they do not do it, and they do not do it because they are doing the thing. I don't think they have the fortitude to kind of own what they're doing because they're doing it unironically. And that is a problem. It's very reminiscent for me of like satirical comedians. When you notice that the satirical comedian who's, just having a go at whoever's in power, suddenly you have a change of government and the satirical comedian can't make any jokes anymore. And you realize, it's not about just observational comedy. It's, you really had a very strong point of view. And now that you're asked to critique people you agree with, you're stuck. So you kind of attack them for the same thing you attacked the last guys for, but you say they aren't doing things enough. It's that kind of thing. It's noticing when the cool, irreverent, snarky comedian doesn't attack the sponsors of their show. When I don't know what's the equivalent. The snarky just talk straight, pulls no punches comedian just looks in the camera and takes a long swig of Diet Coke and says, "My goodness, that's refreshing." It's an awkward thing because you are aware that you become very aware of the limitations on the thing that is meant to be just observing, just commenting. It's disappointing that they pull the punches. they don't even have to, like, I'm not saying they have to, got to be careful who I quote here. I'm not saying they have to quote anyone spicy, but you could find a way of commenting on what you are doing. See, this is why I didn't do a solo show, folks. My voice is not holding up. So that is where I have to put the boot in, basically. You see the limitations very much there, and it's awkward. It's very awkward. Now, I am very delighted to be able to start saying really nice things again, but I'm not going to be able to say them spoiler-free. I'm going to move us into the spoiler zone, folks. Let me have a nice swig on this nice, refreshing Diet Coke. Oh my goodness, I've just seen 0 calories? Wow, this will refresh me and not affect my diet. Oh my goodness, that's so good. That is the refreshing taste of summer right there in my hand. Oh, so good. I wish I'd made a fresh Manhattan, actually. Right. I'm going to say some really good stuff now. I'm going to praise it. I started this movie annoyed, and then I loved it. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. The start of Scream, we know what happens. Someone has to get... Oh, Dr. How could you accuse me of that? Please, please. I was just taking a refreshing, restorative, and just kind of self-pampering Diet Coke break, which I was able to do because, you know, frankly, it was available at the low price, and it's that kind of high value and reliable thing I get from Coke. I couldn't resist it. Okay, right. So. Oh, I see my subtle attempt to order another Manhattan has failed. I gave it a go, eh? All right. I'm fine. I'll make it myself after the shilling. Okay, right. Let's talk about the start. We know there has to be a phone call. Scream is famous for its opening kills more than everyone. Right. I thought it was absolute gash. We have a cameo from Samara Weaving. There's also a cameo from Henry Czerny. Sorry for mangling that. They were in the Team Silent, the director's production company. They were in, I want to say Hide and Seek, but it's not that. It's, we did review it. Ready or Not, I think the name is. There we go. Samara Weaving was solid in that. They brought her back. She is the first person called You Know What's Happening. And I thought it was kind of crummy. It's a date in a bar, and I wasn't feeling it. You know exactly what happens. The Samara Weaving is playing the young assistant professor, talking about how horror gives a voice to the marginalized, and I was like, oh no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But it was kind of adorable. It was fine. You know what they're doing. They didn't push it, but you know, we were giving ourselves side glances, and I was thinking, this is not good stuff. She goes outside. You know what happens, folks. It's a start. She gets murked. She goes into an alley, and I was like, this is a bit standard. It's not terrible, but it's kind of standard. I wasn't feeling it, and I was thinking, oh no, is this the downhill? Have we started it weak? No. They pull off a masterstroke. You have Ghostface in the opening kill staring down at the victim, and then the camera just lingers. You're like, aren't you going to cut away now? No. Because Ghostface takes the mask off, and suddenly I felt like I was getting something that I had wanted for ages. A Scream film where you know who Ghostface is from the start. I have wanted this when I've talked about Scream needs something new. They need something new to do. I thought, yeah, let's follow it through where we know who the killer is. That's really interesting. That's going to shake it up. So I was a big fan of that. Now, beyond that, they don't go with my idea. I know, shocking. I could have done with a consultancy fee, honestly, but you have a killer off that killer, and it's kind of interesting because it was a way of saying that the killer literally mocks. So how can I say, the new killer mocks the revealed killer for his really crappy motivation, which I liked. I really enjoyed that. I'm not going to say it, but it was a movie related motivation, and the new killer kills the wannabe and says, "Who gives an F about movies?" And it was funny, it was brutal, it was nasty. There were all sorts of really funny callbacks. It's actually a callback, the way they're killed, to Friday the 13th Part 2, which gets referenced later in the movie, etc., etc. We like that kind of metatextuality. Unfortunately, after this very promising start, I'm afraid to say, we go back into standard territory, but it was a good idea. The trouble is, when you make a big show of killing a new killer and mocking their terrible motivation, and it would have been a terrible motivation, your motivation has to be better. And I am very sorry to say, this is the weakest bit. Hey Joe. Oh, Joe, you do not do well. You do not do well around animals, do you, friend? Oh, I'm so. It seems like it's every single week, my buddy. Hang on. Wait a second. That's a really good point. Maybe it was the Reddit connection. I'm very sorry to say, folks. Reddit is involved a lot. Okay. I know, far more than it should be in this. It was weird enough in Scream 5. Now you got Reddit turning up again. Gosh darn. Right. So the real killer motivation, I'm very sorry to say, is it's weak. It's extremely weak. I don't know if you want me to say it. There are some. We are in full spoiler mode, so I will just say so. I'm sorry, folks. It's weak. There is a card that has been waiting to be played since Scream 2, and they played it. Now, this is something that was in the original Scream 2 script by Kevin Williamson. Now, in that one, there were 4 killers, okay? Because Kevin Williamson was satirizing how you have that sudden excess in a sequel. So he jumped to 4 killers. Yeah, obviously, that was not in the final, but there was a really cool idea where Sydney is running from a ghost face and meets another ghost face, and you have 2 ghost faces on screen at once, which should not be shocking because we are used to there being 2 ghost faces. But to see them on screen would be powerful. They do that here. We get 2 ghost faces on screen at once. It's kind of cool, but it also it felt almost like they were going for a meme, because they do the I just gestured and I realize I'm not on camera. No spoilers on Shrek 8, I promise. I'm going to be very good. Okay. Oh, Will, I'm all about it. If you want, there is a video on my channel called The Original Terrible Ending of Scream 2, and I would recommend you watch it. Now, you've just got some of the information, but one of the most important things about that original script and the Scream 2 script had to be rewritten hastily because it got leaked early days of the internet. One of the things in the original script is that Randy becomes a gosh darn genius because he absolutely calls every single killer. like an absolute boss. And, it, you know, when they change the ending, that gets lost. They've done my boy Randy dirty there. I need to drink. The voice is going, isn't it? Okay. Gosh, where was I? Where was I, guys? What was I talking about? It was the killers, wasn't it? So they play the card that they've had in their hand the whole time, the double killers on screen. That was cool. It was kind of powerful. They do ruin it because ultimately the person that they stab survives. Weak. And it feels a bit memey when they do the synchronous, blade cleaning. But what are you going to do? I can go either way on it, you know. But we also get 3 killers in this one. And again, this is the full spoiler section. Bail out now if you want. 3 killers. And they are, I'm very sorry to say, taking off the Scream 2 motivation. They are the father, sister, and brother of Richie from Scream 5. If you think it seems weak and desperate, it is. Now, what's part of the problem with this? Part of the problem is it seems pulled out of nowhere. Oh yeah, Richie's got all these extra people. But the other one is just like, it's been done before. It's weak. And the fact that it's 3, it just seems excessive. This is a thing I was talking about. Scream has to point out the thing, but it should not do it unironically. They did it unironically. The absolute excess, the craziness, it's over the top in a way that breaks your immersion. And worse, I had completely guessed who 2 of the 3 were. Again, spoilers here. We're in spoiler territory. You know what? I'm just going to get it up on screen because I need to. Years, this is your moment, my darling. You should not be able to predict this. And the one I'm talking specifically, okay, so shoehorned in non-white homosexual, yes, of course. All the bad guys in the movie will be white guys. I'm afraid that is 100% correct. All of them. 3 of them. In fact, I'm just doing a little check. Everyone who doesn't die, who is white, is evil. Possibly not the boyfriend. Now, people might get annoyed at that prediction being made, that prediction showing up on stream, but the fact is it was correct, and you shouldn't be able to just correctly predict this. In fact, it should be a thing where you do that and people say, you're paranoid, you're crazy, you're obsessed. And it's like, okay, but if we are completely right. Yeah, so you have a scene, it's like literally the ones who Sam gets a boyfriend, and I'm not sure, so I don't want to speculate on him, but basically everyone else, every white person is evil. There is a date rapist attempted at the beginning who is white. Basically everyone who messes up is white. I'm sounding a bit Hamza Yusuf, aren't I here? Date rapist, white. Killers, white. This reference will make absolutely no sense to most of the Americans listening, so I apologise to that. In fact, anyone who is not in Britain and aware of Scottish politics, I apologise for the weird reference there. So again, spoiler mode. One of the killers is Sam and Tara's roommate. Quinn? Yeah, there we go. And Quinn's father is a cop. They reference a couple of times early on about losing her brother, his son. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting, more phlegm. I'm not inaccurate though, am I? If you've seen that video, that is how he says it. Okay, good. People know what I'm talking about. They don't think I've just lost my mind. So she mentioned they drop a reference to losing a son and a brother, and I was just like, okay, that's kind of interesting. Thanks to Waifu's interest in Agatha Christie, I know when a significant clue has been dropped. I was like, I picked up on that. They also find, I think, Sam's driving license at the crime scene from one of the early murders, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it just became very obvious to me. My guess was, right, the roommate has nicked the license. She could easily get it. They live together. She's given it to her dad. Her dad plants it at the scene, and then he's got justification to get in contact with Tara and Sam. They also go for the oh, okay, so I see it's not just me here. Everyone is on it. Everyone worked it out from the license as well. I was like, okay, I see it. And then when the cop summons Sam and Tara to the crime scene, they then get attacked by Ghostface. And I was like, oh, it's a little weird that he was able to get to them so quickly. He must have information about where they were going. And I thought, well, the cop knows where they're going and Quinn knows where they're going. Interesting. It could be someone else, but it would be kind of difficult. And from that point, I was like, okay, it's Quinn and her dad. And I don't know who the son who's been lost is, but okay. And then in that amazing set piece I mentioned, where they have to escape their flat and climb over a ladder into Sam's boyfriend's flat, Quinn is killed. And I was like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. But I was not wrong, because we're told in the finale that Quinn's death was faked. Like, literally, the cop is saying, even though there are loads of other police on the crime scene, I dragged an extra body up there and switched them out. What? It was weird. It was weak. It was trotted out. And there is no way they should have been able to get away with that. But they did it. And then we're left saying, oh, that's really weak sauce. I wish you hadn't. So basically, the killers are really, it's terrible motivation. It's very weak. And remember, I said they started off amazingly by killing off someone with a crap motive and mocking it. They needed a better motive. So unfortunately, like I say, it feels over the top. I would also say that 3 killers is just too much, because at that point it's like, well, it's kind of everyone, right? It makes it a bit too easy, because there can always be 2 of them in sight when the killer's around. This clever idea about how 2 killers allows an alibi at all times. When you make it 3 killers, it's just kind of ridiculous. So, gotta say, extremely, extremely weak killer solution. You may also be wondering, what did they do with the storyline about Sam having an inner darkness? Well, they did bring it back. They used it, but then they discarded it, which is probably the right idea, because I don't think it's a very strong plan. You got Billy again, and it just, another cameo from Skeet Ulrich. It didn't seem like it was done as well. I'm torn, because like Kirby, I like seeing him back, but it's kind of a weak material, I've got to be honest. So, but they're very much, they raised the idea of doing this The Killer in Me storyline with Sam that they teased in Scream 5, but they end the film firmly dumping it and basically saying they're not going forward with it anymore. In fact, the film ends with Sam having been kind of coaxed into using her dark side. It ends with her just dropping the ghost face mask on the floor and walking away, which almost feels like a way of saying we're done with the series. It's a weird thing to end on. It's a very weird ending. Yeah. So this is one of the problems. I've been very negative on this. I've been very, very negative. There's also kind of I should mention it. There's kind of a weird vibe where there's a heck of a lot of hookups, and it just feels a bit weird. Like, I felt so old watching it. I really did feel old. No one's dating. Everyone's hooking up. I don't know. Maybe I'm just yelling at clouds here, but it felt weird to me and kind of a little unpleasant. And what else did I have? Oh, another thing is that I think people will complain about. Again, spoiler mode. They really have the plot armor on people. So I don't know if you want all the details, but I might as well give them here. In that very good section on the tube, Mindy gets stabbed, but not killed. Chad gets massively stabbed again. He is a guy stabbed by 2 ghost faces. You know, I did realize I wanted to end the spoiler section by saying whether or not you should gamble or not, and I didn't. So hopefully people made their decision before I went into full spoiler mode, you know? Anyway. Oh, dear. Right. See, this is the danger of me doing this solo. I'm just going off, and I've overrun. You know, I usually blame my guests when I overrun and upset Super Nanny, but I think maybe the caller was coming from inside the house. What do you reckon, folks? What else did one say? Oh, yeah. So Mindy's stabbed and survives. Okay, fine. The killer could have very easily finished her off, but didn't. Chad is stabbed so many times. He is punctured. Okay. He is punctured like a... I was going to use the most... punctured like the condom you hand an NBA star when you're trying to trap him and make him your baby daddy. This is why I don't drink before streams. Not family friendly. And Chad survives. Now, Chad survived the last time. It feels a little weird to do it again. Like, they played it up so much for tragedy, and then he survives, and it's sort of the power gets taken out of it. He also makes he also uses the inappropriate tension-killing humor that you see a lot in modern horror that I didn't like. They're being attacked, and he makes a little joke in there. Not a fan of it. And oh, who else? Oh, and of course, you know that I feel chat. I feel I'm being mocked here. Like he really did get stabbed a lot. You know, so many stabs. Really, I feel you're joshing me, chat. I feel you're taking advantage of my N Manhattan state. Honestly. So, Gail is in the trailer. We know she gets attacked. And my theory was, you know, the legacy characters are done. In my head fic, in my preferred version, you don't have Sydney in Scream 5. You have Dewey and Gail, and they're both gone. And it's their death that summons Sydney back into the franchise. That's what I'd have gone for. That didn't happen. What they did was fine. I liked it. But you don't have Sydney in this one. I thought she would be in as cameo. I thought there was some kayfabe about her not being in. I was wrong. So it's just on Gail. And as I've said, they did not use Gail well. The big question is, are they cleaning house? No. She gets stabbed. She gets stabbed nastily. And they're playing it emotionally, and it's good, and she should have gone out, and she survived. No one dies in this movie. It is plot armor on everyone. And the trouble is, as we've shown, they don't know what to do with Gail. They don't know what to do with her. And they kept her around. It's awkward. She should have gone out. But it felt... I didn't get the logic behind it. if she's going out, it would have worked, but they didn't. They pulled their punches. Everyone survived. It was weird. Oh dear. So that was another complaint I had. Again, I've gone out of my way to say nice things about this. I really have. It is not all terrible, but gosh darn it. You know, they were really trying to do a thing. They make a thing of Sam and how many times she stabs when she's on a rampage. I did like that, actually. It's kind of memey, but it's also fun. It's effective. It's this wonderful excess. I was a fan of it. Yeah. Oh, gosh darn it. So yeah, we've got the plot armor, which is weird. It's very weird, and it just feels like a move away from what Scream is about. I said at the start, Scream has to be outside of horror movie logic, commenting on horror movie logic. This Scream 6 is just a slightly self-aware horror movie. It's not terrible. It's got a lot of the adapted for modern audiences stuff. It's got what I like to call the treatment. I was gonna mention this earlier. What I'm trying to say is the critical drinker talks about the message. I talk about the treatment, and the treatment's when something starts off just focusing on story and it's successful. And then when they make more of it, they add the message. They work it over to make it more in line with the message. And they definitely did it with this one. Like Mindy, who made a couple of activisty points in the first one, is now, it's her whole personality, and she is poorer for it. Like she wore a little pride badge in Scream 5, and in this one she's got literally every outfit she has an activist slogan on it. And it's sort of, it feels like you could comment on that, but they don't, because they're not coming at it from a neutral point. They're coming at it from a perspective, which is why she does that and then just not commented on. So she gets the treatment. And another way, and this is going to sound so petty, this is going to sound very petty. Mindy and Kirby meet, and that was kind of sweet because Mindy and Kirby are basically the same character. They were the Randy replacements, yeah? They are the ones who have all the horror knowledge. They drop all the lore. And so it's cute that they actually sat down and briefly discussed horror movies. And I realized like that this scene kind of encapsulates the problem. They just start going through franchises, right? They go through, they start saying, what's your favorite Nightmare on Elm Street? And they both say in sync, the original. It's like, oh yeah, fair, respectable. I mean, I'm sure most of you are expecting Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Who doesn't love Larry Fishburne turning up, eh? They have a differing opinion on Friday the 13th. Mindy says her favorite is 2, and Kirby says 4. And you might think, why are you getting upset by this, Chloe? Who cares? Well, it kind of matters, because why would, apart from a reference to like a visual in the kill, basically a body stuffed in a fridge, apart from calling back to that, why would Mindy, the horror film expert, prefer Friday the 13th Part 2? It's not meta, it's not intelligent, it's, it's one of the weaker ones. Jason, it brings back Jason on a very spurious pretense. I would have thought that, she would have an idea like Kirby. Kirby goes for Part 4, which is the darker, grimmer one. Yeah, nice. It's a fine choice. I would have thought Mindy queen of horror knowledge would have preferred Friday the 13th Part 6 because it's the meta one, right? It's one where they're very self-aware of the tropes. 7, also very respectable. And as Eddie789 says, yeah, Jason X is a hoot. It's just fun. But in doing all that, but the problem is they just say, they also, you synchronously say, Psycho 2, underrated. Correct, Psycho 2 is underrated. Tom Holland did an amazing job. The problem is, and the reason I'm spending so much time on this, it's, my problem is that they are just mentioning horror, but not going into it. Why did they prefer, why did Mindy prefer Friday the 13th Part 2? Why did she not go for Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3? Why was Psycho 2 underrated? It felt very shallow. And a sort of lack of understanding of just having the basic detail, but missing some of the deeper stuff is the problem that plagues Scream 6. And furthermore, guys, how much do you think this triggered me? They talk about Candyman. Candyman original or the Jordan Peele one? Sorry, Nia DaCosta fans, it's Jordan Peele's one. We all know this. And they synchronously say both. And I know you're picturing me being a little ball of fury in the cinema, and I was a torrent of rage, because no way does a serious horror fan think the 2021 Candyman is anywhere close on the same level of the 1992 Candyman in any way, in storytelling ability, in message subtlety, in acting. No, absolute mess. But Scream 6 isn't going to comment isn't going to criticize the extremely woke, very on message Candyman 2021 because they agree with it, because they are bought in. And that is so disappointing. That is so, so disappointing. And for me, it kind of encapsulated the problem here. This is a bit of a captured franchise. I'm sounding really harsh on it. I'm just... I've lost my train of thought, guys. It is just me. I've been talking relentlessly. I love that you sat through this, folks. You're wonderful people. It's a captured franchise. The problem is, as I said, the question of, did this need to exist? And I think it kind of proved that it didn't. I'm being very harsh on it. Most of these flaws become very obvious at the end. You can overlook it. There are, there's a problem that Mindy's girlfriend dies in a horrifically brutal way. And it doesn't really get dealt with. From my memory, she's kind of cracking jokes again in the couple of scenes. And it's like, wouldn't you be traumatized? Wouldn't you be absolutely traumatized? That is the best scene. Well, it's either the apartment invasion and the tube attack. Either of those could be the best scene in the movie, okay? There's just something so exciting about Ghostface not trying to take anyone one-on-one, but Ghostface just goes in and attacks all of them at once, And frankly, the ability to take that many people on all at once and try and finish them off, Ghostface should have signed up for the Minnesota police, honestly. Again, this is why I shouldn't do streams alone and cocktailed. Let's just pretend I didn't say that, okay? So, the point was, Mindy's girlfriend dies horribly, and it is effective. It is brutal. And then Mindy is just kind of chill about it. The deaths don't feel real. It doesn't feel like a real world. It feels like it's too bought into more disposable horror movie logic. But these flaws wouldn't stand out as much if they managed to land the ending, if they'd had the guts to actually kill some of the characters that they did horrible, horrible things to, and if they had killers who had a good motivation. But the fact that the killers had such weak motivation, that is your problem. Because when that is in your face, you start nitpicking. I've been thinking recently, and this is going to be one of the last things I say. I'm going to move off this, folks. I've pretty much said everything I want to say. I kind of said something like this about Candyman 2021, but it's something that came to me when I was watching a critique of Endgame. I really enjoyed Endgame in the cinema, but intellectually, it doesn't hold up. It emotionally worked. Because I was along emotionally, I was bought in. That film got away with so much silly stuff. It is only when I sort of step out of it and see it broken down, I realize, okay, this doesn't make any sense. There are loads of problems. But because it worked emotionally, I did not see that in the moment. Scream 6 was carrying me along emotionally for a lot of it. But once it got to the terrible reveal of the awful excuse for the killers and the very silly things that they had in it, I was out. And my brain just started immediately unpicking the film. So that's a problem. It is not all bad. It has a lot of the standard movie problems that you expect from a major Hollywood production these days. The message is in here. It has had the treatment, no doubt. But it starts strong. It starts with good ideas. It lands some incredibly effective set pieces that are scary, that are tense, and work on you emotionally. But gosh darn it, by the time you get to that ending, it does ruin it. It really does ruin it. And yeah. Where do we go from here? I don't know. I think there are ideas you could do, obviously you could bring Sydney back, but for me, this does feel very much like it's kind of okay to stop here. I think this is very inessential. If you want to know, should you watch it? I wouldn't rush to it. And I'm very sorry to say that. The ending isn't meh. The ending is just actually bad. And yeah, so I've got to say, it's not fully atrocious, the whole thing, but you will be disappointed at the end. So this is the first one where I'm going to say, yeah, I wouldn't rush to watch it. I wouldn't rush to this one. It's skippable. I think, again, they did a great job with Scream 5. I would probably rewatch that. That had some emotional payoff. It wasn't perfect, but it had good emotional payoff. This is messy. You could skip it. And if everything finished at 5, that would be all right. That's pretty much everything I had to say on this one, folks. I thought I'd go for an hour, but it turns out I can talk about movies a lot, especially when they defile the perfect memory of Candyman, the only 12 out of 12 burger film that exists. Remember, you always add the Tony Todd modifier, the Toddifier. If you want a quick burger score for this, I hate to say it, 5. It's a 5, maybe a 6. But the ending is that bad that you will be annoyed and just feel that your time was kind of wasted. I would rewatch other stuff. I would go back to 4. 4 is very underappreciated. So there we go. I think it's a 5. I got to be honest. It's a 5. I know some people loved it. If you liked it, good for you. I don't want to take any joy away from anybody. But this, for me, would have been better if they hadn't rushed it, if they hadn't had to get it out in a year. I don't know what this 8 Shrek meme is, but gosh darn it. What is it? What is this Shrek 8 thing? I'm so confused. Oh gosh darn it. All right. I think that is everything, folks. I'm going to have to end here. But hey, I'm going to be back on Thursday talking about The Wicker Man. It is the 100th episode of Double Feature Horror Show. So that should be a hoot. Yeah, I think we're good. I'm looking at my notes here. It's all good. My predictions were terrible. How much better would this have been if I'd been right, eh? All right. We're good. I'm leaving it there. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope you enjoy your Sunday. I hope you will join me again on Thursday, and I am going to leave it here. So thanks, y'all. Cheers.